Well, welcome everyone to this session of Administrator Issues and Updates on January 28, 2025. County Administrator Schmidt, would you please call the roll?
Yes, Chair Roberts, thank you. Roll call. Commissioner Savas.
Present.
Commissioner Fireside.
Here.
Commissioner Schrader. Here. Commissioner West.
Here.
Chair Roberts.
Here. Thank you again. Gary, would you please introduce the first agenda item for us?
Yes, thank you, Chair. First is Hoodland Community Planning Organization, or CPO, bylaws. Tonya Holowetzky, Director of Public and Government Affairs, will present. Go ahead, please.
Good morning, Commissioners. Tonya Holowetzky, Director of Public and Government Affairs. I'm here this morning to request your approval for the proposed bylaws for the Hoodland Community Planning Organization. They revise their bylaws to expand their officers' roster and include more details regarding the responsibility of each position. That expansion changed their quorum requirements, which are also reflected in the bylaws. The bylaws were reviewed by PGA. They were sent to County Council for review, and they are now ready for your review and approval.
Great, and thank you. And I see I have a colleague that has a question. Commissioner Schrader?
No, I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. Commissioner Savas?
Yeah, so we have been, if I understand it, trying to streamline all the bylaws for all the different ABCs and
Correct.
CPOs. So
Correct.
this is in that effort, right, in that vein, correct?
It's in that vein. We're with the ABCs, what we're doing right now is we're reviewing all of the bylaws to see where they're aligned and where they're not. And we'll be bringing that information. We'll be working then with County Council to decide on what we want those bylaws parameters to look like, and then work towards changing those and amending those. Correct. So this is, I would say, a little bit ahead of that process, but still with that eye, yes, of review.
So what has been any pushback, involvement from the Hoodland CPO? They're aware of this, they're okay with it?
There have been no pushback or no issues from
Okay.
the CPO.
Okay, great, thank you.
Seeing no other questions, may I have a motion to approve the Hoodland CPO bylaws?
So moved.
Second.
And Commissioner Savas has moved to approve the Hoodland CPO bylaws, seconded by Commissioner Fireside. Any further discussion? Seeing none, Clerk, would you please call the poll?
Commissioner Schrader.
Aye.
Commissioner West.
Aye.
Commissioner Fireside.
Aye.
Commissioner Savas.
Aye.
Chair Roberts.
Aye. Motion's approved, 5-0. Gary, what's next?
Thank you. Next is State Transportation Package Advocacy Logo Use. Tonya will also present this item. Go ahead, please.
Thank you. So we're moving from community relations to government relations, and what we have in front of you today is a request to reapprove the use of the county logo and the language of the joint values and outcomes document that this board approved, not this board, the previous board approved in August for the 2025 State Legislative Transportation Package. So as I mentioned, we brought this joint values and outcomes document to the previous board last summer. It was reviewed and approved. But because of the November elections, many communities are welcoming in new elected officials. So this document is actually going for review among all of our partners in who are members of C4, which is the Clackamas County Coordinating Committee. To date, we have had 6 jurisdictions approve the document and their use of logo without any changes. We're waiting for 6 more responses, and it is in front of you today for that same reason.
Great, and thank you. And I see I have a colleague that has questions. Commissioner Savas.
Oh, just a comment, a little bit more background on this. C4, as you probably know, is basically one of our committees. We have been working with not just the representative members of the cities, but also with other city councilors and representatives of the cities on this whole effort. And we have our retreat once a year. This year we were, we had 2 guests, both the co-chairs of the Joint Committee on Transportation attend our C4 retreat. This strategy of working as a coalition, not just with C4, with everyone, the county and the cities, has really been very galvanizing. It's been a very positive experience and has really, I think, moved the needle on making our issues, known. And, we've been pretty effective. So, we haven't had anyone who wants to change anything. And I think as staff here just introduced here, we've got half there and for 6 already to be on board with just a short time frame, that's great. And I'm sure the other will go along. So I just want to just give my endorsement for the work that we've all done, and also shout out to all the mayors and the city councilors who have been very supportive with us.
Thank you.
It wasn't easy, by the way. It took a lot. It might be easy right now to renew it, right, and refresh it, but it was a lot of conversations, a lot of work went into this.
Great. Thank you, Commissioner Savas. Not seeing any other questions or concerns, can I have a motion to approve the use of the logo and the language of the Joint Values and Outcome document for 2025 State Legislative Transportation Package?
So move. Second.
And Commissioner Schrader has moved to reapprove the use of the county logo and language of the Joint Values and Outcome document for 2025 State Legislative Transportation Package. And Commissioner Fireside has seconded that motion. Any further discussion? Seeing none, Clerk, would you do me a favor and call the poll?
Commissioner Savas.
Aye.
Commissioner West.
Aye.
Commissioner Fireside.
Aye.
Commissioner Schrader.
Aye.
Chair Roberts.
Aye. Motion's approved 5-0. And Gary, what is next?
Great, thank you, and thank you, Tonya.
Thank you.
Next, board meeting days. Last week, Commissioners, we discussed this with you on what days of the week you would like to conduct your business as far as formal board meetings, policy sessions, issues, and so forth. At that time, you discussed as a team with some healthy debate to choose Tuesdays all day for work sessions and retain Thursday morning 10 a.m. for business meetings. Since that meeting, I've understood some of you have talked and maybe consider changing that to Wednesdays all day. So I'm bringing this back to you one more time to just confirm, would you like to have Tuesdays all days for work sessions or Wednesdays all day for work sessions? There's no right or wrong answer. Staff will do whatever you direct, but just seeking a further conversation and clarity, please.
Commissioner Schrader, you're up first.
I'm fine with whatever the board decides. Okay, so Tuesday or Wednesday, so I think it's up to my colleagues.
Thank you.
I can do that.
Commissioner West.
Yeah, so we had a pretty robust conversation last week. Immediately after that conversation, because other obligations I had, I immediately solidified those obligations to work as a cardiology nurse at OHSU. I needed to make sure that if I had the availability and could commit to it, that on specific days, like Wednesday, I could provide that care to the patients and to the team that I work with. And then it came back to my attention that potentially may need to change again. If we do switch it to Wednesdays, I will not be able to participate because it would not be fair to that obligation when in good faith this was already discussed, and I made that choice moving forward after waiting a few weeks to get to that point to be able to let the, OHSU know where I was going and what my availability was as a nurse. So I would hope, I mean, the board can do what it wants to do, but I thought we were all had already made our concerns or issues around additional obligations or child care public here on the dais. Then that seemed to not be the case after the fact. That was professionally difficult for me to potentially handle. So at least for the next 6 to 8 weeks, I would like to keep it on a Tuesday and Thursday. And if you don't see me on a Wednesday and this board makes another decision, everyone publicly knows I will be providing nursing care because I was under the impression that we made a decision publicly already.
And Commissioner Savas.
Yeah, reflecting back on that conversation, there's probably one thing I probably should have, a couple things I probably should have said, but I didn't think about them. But again, I guess I am reflecting somewhat on my 14 years here, what I learned and watched and operated on. I do know that there are times where we decide something on Tuesday, and then staff needs to get a whole lot of work to get something done by Thursday. And to compress that and with less than 24 hours, I think will slow us down, slow our progress down on some, when those type situations arise. I was very vocal in speaking out and saying what I didn't like about what occurred over the last 4 years was having Tuesdays be half-days and Wednesdays be, if we even met at all, it seemed. But I didn't feel like though we were getting a chance to work together as a team and hear from our department. So, Chair Roberts, you and I met late last year, and talked about that. So I think I was excited, the fact that we were adding more work and time to work as a board, together. And so I was excited by that. So extending the day, one of the previous half days to a full day, I want to make it perfectly clear I am in support of. But I guess it's what I want to add to that, not just the situations that come up where it's so compressed we can't make the changes in time, but the studying and the preparation and all of that. It seemed to me that we really hummed, I would say, and we were at a pretty good clip, and things were relatively efficient, as it stood 5 or 6 years ago when we had the Tuesday model of working all day with the overflow and giving staff time to prep for the Thursday or whatever else. And the agenda, by the way, there's more than just the meeting on Thursday. It's also, if we want something on the week following, that would really put a lot of pressure on getting the agenda out and the work packet out if something was directed on a Wednesday, for example. So, I think it's what I really like is that we are been very, credit to staff, Gary, very good about getting the agendas out in a week's notice. And I think this would strain that significantly. So I just want to say I support working a full day, overflow and land use issues on Wednesday, and then our business meeting and somewhat status quo on Thursday. And I say that from the standpoint of, how the county works. If we end up go to Wednesday and we take all the Tuesdays off, I will be working. I guarantee you that. And I'll probably be in Salem most of Tuesdays from here forward, I think. It doesn't matter. It matters, but I'm just thinking about what's in the best interest of both staff and our efficiency. So, Chair, I yield back.
Any other comments? I think Commissioner West put it well. I'm doing my best to really reach out to the commissioners, find this happy balance, and I think that trying to be cognitive that you did book your schedule. And I know how it is like booking shifts, and it's a domino effect, as I kind of say. And I've talked to Commissioner Fireside, and I think for right now, the best thing to do would be to continue for the next 6 to 8 weeks with the schedule as Tuesday and Thursday, as we've kind of mentioned, if my colleagues could accommodate that, and then bring it back as a discussion item at our retreat. And so I'm hoping that we can do that and have further conversation with staff, and we're trying to accommodate everybody and what's most cost effective and what's most efficient. So we'll just kind of put a pause on it for right now, and I'll give kudos to Gary. It was his suggestion, to bring that back in the retreat. So thank you, Gary. I was also kind of trying to find some resolution. So if my colleagues would, if there's no further discussion, perhaps somebody might make a motion that we.
So I would say, Chair, a motion's not needed since this confirms what you already decided last week. So I would say a motion's not needed because you're not changing your prior decision.
Okay. Does that sound?
And point of order.
Yes, go ahead.
Gary's not sure it's ultimately the chair's choice. Right decision.
In my opinion, based on the code and the board rules, it's the chair's decision on when you meet, but 2 or 3 of you can disagree. But this chair is asking for your opinion.
You've been very great. Thank you, by the way, for collaborating with your colleagues and trying to massage this and lead us through this. I just want to understand the point of order. Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, so we're going to go full day Tuesdays, maintain Thursday business meeting days for now, and have a fuller discussion at your retreat where you may choose to make changes at that time. Okay.
So I do have one clarifying question, and it's kind of directed towards Commissioner West, and I think I understood. But if you could just add some light on this, Commissioner West, and that is that it's not as though your Wednesday commitments are absolute, right? There are days where you will actually you'll be available on Wednesdays. It'll just be that you've committed to being available on Wednesdays, but not necessarily that you are committed and you won't be here every Wednesday from here forward, correct?
Almost.
Okay.
I have committed to some Wednesdays because they needed those coverage. But I'm not, but the county comes first in my obligations to the county, and if I have availability and they need me to step in to cover for the cardiology unit, I step in and do that. And so it was just based on their request to me in the next few weeks. They were like, we could really use you on these Wednesdays. And so I had been waiting a couple weeks for this decision to be made. The moment it was made, I solidified those. But moving forward, it doesn't necessarily have to be Tuesday, Thursday for me in 6 to 8 weeks. I can always say, hey, these are my new availability days, and the hospital will work around what I say I'm available, because I work per diem for them, so it's very part-time. So it's just this situation I had just turned around and committed because of the decision made publicly.
Okay. And then I guess my other clarification I need is from Gary. So what you heard last week, was that going to be the land use, would that still maintain on Wednesdays?
If we can fit it in on Tuesdays, I'm going to propose everything on a Tuesday. If that is a time crunch, then I'll talk with the chair, and yes, we can potentially have a Wednesday session. I think we could fit it all in on a single day.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks. The only thing I wanted to add is also extend a thanks to Commissioner Fireside. She's got a scheduling conflict, and want you to know we're trying to work on that. And over the next 6 to 8 weeks, I know that's going to be a challenge for her. So I'm trying to listen to everybody's schedules and make that accommodation as best I can. So I know that's imposition for you, so just wanted to say
No,
thank
that's
you
fine. Thank you.
for doing that. So, so since we don't need a motion on this, the next thing at hand is, I gotta double check here. We've covered that, and really, I think it's switching to Commissioner Communication.
I have one more, please, Chair. It's
Did I
the
miss
board,
one?
review of your board business meeting agenda for this Thursday, January 30th, 2025, 10 a.m. A reminder, all consent items are going directly to consent, so please read the consent agenda, and if you do have questions or concerns, if you would let me or staff know prior to Thursday, so we can answer that for you. There is one I think will draw your attention. I'm actually going to call it out right now. It's under elected officials, approving the authority for the chair or the county administrator to sign sensitive law enforcement agreements on behalf of the sheriff's office without going to a public discussion. This is allowed by state law, and we've done this previously here at the county. This is extending that for an additional 5 years. We would brief the board in executive session first before the chair or I sign such a document. These are so sensitive, it would be of the public's interest not to share it publicly so that we can protect the public and our law enforcement officials. So that's something we've already done, but if you want further discussion, please let me know and staff can brief you prior to this Thursday. But it's on your consent for this Thursday to extend that agreement. All right, so that's for this Thursday. Now, Chair, Commissioner Communications.
Okay, thanks, Gary. I apologize for skipping over that.
It's okay.
So, Commissioner Communication, and I reach out to my colleague to the right as having the most years in service. So, Commissioner
I may
Schrader.
never leave. I may just end up here as a mummified body, you know. And I've also threatened to have a little urn downstairs with my ashes, just for the heck of it. Put it in my will to make everybody go nuts. In any case, I wanted to let folks know that I'll be going to the Oregon City Business Alliance luncheon, and it's going to be reviewing about looking beyond and what's new for 2025 at the Abernathy Center. And then I'll be heading over to the observation of the point-in-time count at Our Father's Heart. They do a fantastic job. I'm glad they're here in Oregon City, and they've become a site for us to do that. I also would like to mention that tomorrow afternoon, I will be going to Peter Courtney's Celebration of Life. I'll probably see a number of old friends and colleagues there from my Senate days, and I'm looking forward to that. But I also want to say I'm so sad that he is gone. He was the longest-serving member. I think he was, when I was first there, he was Speaker of the House, moved on to become President of the Senate, and is the longest-serving President of the Senate in the history of Oregon. He loved Oregon. He loved his job. He was sometimes a little unorthodox in his approach, but that was just Courtney's way of getting what he needed and wanted. And when I was in the Senate with him, I constantly gave him heartburn, I have to say, because I was one of the more moderate Democrats in the Senate, and with Joanne Verger and Betsy Johnson, and Joanne Verger has also passed away, who was a dear friend of mine. And he'd haul me into his office and give me a talking to, and oftentimes holding a stuffed animal, so that was one of his unorthodox things. But he was a great man, a great humanitarian. And I have the privilege of sitting on the Senate floor tomorrow with my other colleagues to be there. And one of the other things I want to add is we go back so long that Rob Wagner and I, who is now the president of the Senate, we were legislative assistants together in 1997, so I can't get out of my mind. I keep calling him Little Robbie. You know, I was the mom of the group. And as an older legislative assistant, and I guess that's just been my role permanently for life at this point. So thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Commissioner Savas?
Yeah, just reflecting, I didn't really know Peter Courtney. I knew of him and watched him work, and I remember sometimes when he was invited to speak as a panelist or something like that, it was something you never wanted to miss, because he was, number one, informative. His style was unique. I could only just really, I just appreciated the way he worked, and the way he communicated was really unique. I mean, it was impactful. I mean, he was effective. He's a very effective communicator, and all about his style. Colleagues, what I would like, I know we have time, a little bit of time, but I would maybe ask us to just talk, not, I think constructively. I don't want to be throwing daggers at anyone, but, based on the letter we received from President Peterson in regard to the SHS service, it was a public letter, it's public facing. I guess she's trying to roll out perhaps a construct of what representation may be, going forward, from, I guess, now to September or August, because they would have to make a call if they want to put something on the ballot in November. And I read it a couple times in great detail, but not asking for a decision, but what I'm kind of leaning towards is asking us to comprise, and maybe based on some of the discussion we have here, so staff can hear us, put together a nice response letter of maybe some ideas we'd have of maybe what a construct might look like, and what some of the outstanding issues are that we need to solve in order to address population A and population B. But I just thought this might be a great opportunity just to I'll just put my commissioner comments aside and just kind of like hear what you all have to say, so we can have some kind of a letter crafted to respond. A nice letter to, let's start a new day, let's hit the reset button on this whole thing, and figure out a way we can solve some of the problems and look at the last 3 or 4 or 5 months or 12 months of what didn't go right. I think we can reflect on that. And so I think representation from the electeds in the counties would be an imperative, as well as trying to identify what the current construct implementation plan does not allow us to do, and a number of things. So, Chair, I know this is, if you're okay with this, I know Commissioner West has some ideas, and I know that each of us, actually, Commissioner Fireside, you as well, have some ideas about this. I know we're all passionate about helping this population out, and I'm just kind of concerned that if we get off on the wrong foot again, we're going to be right where we were a week ago. So, but I will be asking for a letter under issues, and I want to make sure that all your thoughts are included maybe in what that draft might look like.
All right. How about we finish with Commissioner Communication, and then maybe we come back to that, and then kind of a point of procedure. I might turn to Gary on this a little bit. Commissioner West's comments from you as far as Commissioner Communication?
I totally support Commissioner Savis's recommendation. Some of that has already been communicated in the letter I signed on behalf of the board when you guys were just getting up to speed, Chair, and Commissioner Fireside and abstained as you guys were just right getting into the saddle. So, but I do think that there's some movement here. There was a lot of nice platitudes in the letter, a few little olive branches as she, and it was, I don't know if it didn't look like she was representing that letter in all of Metro, but that was from her desk or her office specifically as the Metro Council president. I think there's some common ground there, and I think there's some leverage points from counties and cities that are continued to be pulled. I'm open to exploring and having a longer policy discussion about in light of, there are some serious questions to bring up in light of the recent changes. I mean, it is brand new that we're not going to see this on, we had been, working to push back against this being on the ballot this spring. I still think we should push back against it being on a ballot in a non-election year. This is just too big of an issue. I know it saves Metro some money, but since when do they care about saving money? They spend a lot of it. I think we should just do what's best for the electorate to have their voice on if this goes to the ballot. Maybe we talk about the things that there are common ground. Let's put that to the ballot first. The things that there's governance structure. There's other things that there are common ground on that we can kind of pull together. The things that are more controversial, like the long extension, some of those other things, and then maybe we don't advocate for that in our letter. We could also talk about, there's a lot of talk right now around the data sharing. I think we need to come to a decision as a board about what that looks like, and their strategy about us being the first out the gate to say, we got it, we want the data necessary to be transparent, and here's our agreement, and here's what we agreed to, and here's how we still protect the county while also giving that information to Metro. But I think that's something that we need to really address, that as Commissioner Fireside, I believe you said, has been clearly in the meeting something that they continue to address from Metro. I think there are things for us to continue to build on based on that previous letter. I'm totally open to that. I don't know if we do it today or we do it later, but I'm open. It's a busy week. I'm meeting with John Isaac today. Chair, we're both going to meet with him about Portland Metro's proposals around the changes they want to see. He represents the business community, the chamber of the Portland area. He doesn't represent really Clackamas County or Washington County, but they are working together really closely with some of the advocates from the service providers to make some of these sweeping changes. I think there's a robust conversation and relationship that we need to establish there, so I look forward to that meeting with you, Chair, later this afternoon. We also, we have an Oregon Business Association luncheon today that I look forward to reporting on once we do that. I'm going to be testifying at the state legislature on a bill that I've been passionate about, helping bend the cost curve in healthcare. And one of those things is preventative care and value-based care, and that impacts us at the county. Also, it costs counties when we deliver health care money also. And so helping to figure out creative ways to focus on prevention within healthcare to bend that cost curve, and then which also allows us to get ahead of advanced cardiovascular disease is the focus of this bill, get ahead of it quickly before it advances into something more severe like a bypass or a stroke or some other adverse outcome that if we were ahead of it years and we got the screening necessary to an individual, that we could really begin to see a reduction in those very serious outcomes. And so that impacts healthcare across the entire government and the private sector. We have to bend that cost curve. It's Senate Bill 56. At my request, it was brought forward by Senator Hayden. I believe I maybe I shouldn't say it publicly, but I don't think he'd mind that Senator Gorsuch is really interested in this bill also and supporting. So I'll be testifying to that. I've brought it up last legislative session just because I think principally whenever we can bend the cost curve in government and how we deliver these services and being prevention-minded, we should be advocating for those bills, even though it's not technically like a county, in the county lens, right? It's not technically that part of the county, but if we can prevent our patients from having adverse cardiac outcomes by a large number, that does save the county money and allows us to have other resources for care. That's Senate Bill 56. I'm testifying on that today. It's supported by a number of my colleagues in cardiology at OHSU. I don't think we're getting any pushback from any of the insurance companies. They're staying neutral on it, which is great because it is a mandate that this is preventative care is covered, the bill, and we're not getting OHSU has traditionally been supportive, actually, as a hospital to this bill also. We've seen the prices since the last time this came up increase exponentially for these very simple tests because the OHSU no longer is subsidizing the cost to patients. So hundreds of dollars to thousands of dollars increased for just basic simple screening to help understand someone's calcium scoring. And that test can make all the difference in how we tailor someone's care. And it is easy, it is affordable, and it is preventative care. And it's much cheaper than a bypass or a stroke or something else, or advanced lipid management or something like that. So everybody knows I'm passionate about access to health care. I would be awesome if this board would say, yeah, that just hits our value system, so let's get behind it as a board. I know Trent's been helping me a little bit with it, and staff has been because last time we were. But just principally, like preventative care, access to care, Senate Bill 56, I would love the board to maybe say, it's not super county-ish, but let's get behind it in principle. So I throw that out there to you guys. And then I'm going to have a meeting with the mayor of Westland this afternoon. I'll report back on how that goes. We've had a very collaborative, wonderful relationship with the mayor of Westland, especially on transportation issues. And he was quite the notable star with us fighting tolling. So I look forward to that meeting too. So with all of that said, I know I threw a lot out there, but I will pass the baton or give up the floor. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner West. Commissioner Fireside.
Thank you. So last week I met with some constituents from Oak Grove and Jennings Lodge. We just had a robust discussion about the issues facing that particular area. I mean, we as the county commission are pretty much their mayor and city council. So it was great to sort of talk to them and hear from them about what their needs are. And then later on this week, I will be meeting with a couple members of our planning commission, which is where I get to wonk out because I really love the work that they do and I'm really interested in what comes before them. So that's all I have. Thanks, Chair.
Great, and thank you. I think just a couple highlights. I'll follow kind of Commissioner Schrader. We're doing the point in time count. I'm going out there as well. And so kind of I want to see firsthand really kind of how that takes place. Gary and I met with union leadership, which was a great opportunity. We met all in person, and it was a great chance to kind of just meet all the individuals, talk about some of the issues. I think that one of the things I did want to repeat, which we said on that particular day when we met, is we're doing an employee survey, and I strongly encourage all the employees to complete that survey. It gives us a point in time to see where we're at. Our goal is obviously to improve employee wellness and address the concerns that employees have to say. So it all starts with helping us complete that survey. We'll be doing another one down the road to kind of see if we're moving the dial. And it's important for us to make this a great and wonderful place to work. And the way you do that is you constantly strive to improve. And that's where we're at. So I think again, I've said this before, but again, a big thanks to my fellow elected officials, the DA and other. I've been really meeting back-to-back meetings with directors, hearing their concerns, learning more about their budget, And I'm getting close to being done with that, and then we'll begin some of the external stuff that I'm hoping to get to. So with that, I did want to just kind of come back to County Administrator Schmidt as really a point of procedure regarding what my fellow commissioner brought up as far as discussing that. Should we schedule that for another time? I'll be honest with you, I just came out of executive session. When I was in there, I breezed over that letter. I really never had a chance to really digest it. I would like a little more time to kind of really kind of put my thoughts around it, but I would turn to you for suggestions.
Yes. Certainly, now that we have more time on Commissioner Communications, it's totally appropriate for any of you to bring up a topic you'd like the board to discuss further. You're not making a decision today, you're just directing, in this case, Commissioner Savas would like an item on issues next week. And it sounds like he'd like to propose a letter. You can brainstorm ideas for that letter now, but next week is when you'd see a draft and then you discuss it fully then. So it is okay now for you to discuss general themes or ideas, knowing you would not have a formal discussion until next week.
Great. So I guess I'd open it up to my colleagues if they'd like to add anything to that. Commissioner West?
If we have time and we're going to just jump in and talk about it, I know Emily's in the room here. She'd be great if she wanted to come and participate and maybe give her thoughts. I know up here because she's been totally in the thick of this with us.
So that's why I would say respectfully, no. So this
No.
is your chance to talk, and you're giving general direction to me, and then next week, that's when staff would be prepared to come to the
Preparing,
table
okay.
and have a discussion with you.
I know I probably threw out like 4 or 5 ideas just in my, I don't necessarily need to read, maybe I do, but I can repeat them, but I think that those are all things that we might want to discuss in our letter that are kind of advancing this conversation forward. I read the letter, it did, just for the record, it came last night, so it wasn't, I mean, it's fair if our colleagues need a little bit more time just to even have that as a frame of reference. But yeah, I'm flexible to whatever. I don't know, the time frame isn't super urgent to address this because if they're not advancing this in the spring, so if we waited a week or two, it's not the end of the world either. Do you agree, Commissioner's office?
Yeah, and I'm not suggesting we commit to anything. It was just more about kind of verbalizing. And when we have had these in the past, just discussions, not without an agenda, but talking about a particular item, discussing what I think we all learn from each other. I find them extremely valuable, and as well as it kind of helps us get to know each other as well, and most particularly on the issues. So no, there's no urgency to it. I think that if there is an element of urgency, it is, that we kind of get our foot in the door as soon as possible to say, hey, why don't you involve us in trying to how to set the table? She's already got it kind of defined, right? And I just, my idea maybe of getting recognition and attention drawn to, and I haven't heard it really discussed very much. If we can or we cannot, or if there's a will or there is not a will to use supportive housing services, for example, to address behavioral health, bed capacity, and drug addiction capacity. And I don't think there's enough money there to do that. And I also believe
The
that.
language either, really.
Right. And I also believe that it's more of a state responsibility. And so, to me, I think it's not reasonable to hold anyone, Metro, any of us, responsible for those services when we need the state support for it. So if we don't have that, we don't have the state's presence in these meetings or the state support for making changes during the legislative session, I just see some opportunity here, right? But I think we need to draw attention to the fact that if we're going to hold ourselves accountable for treating population A, and they need drug addiction and or they need behavioral health services or whatever those are, and the constraints of the measure or the constraints of the implementation plan don't allow us to do that, or the financial constraints don't allow us to do that, then setting goals for accomplishing what the supported housing service is not realistic, right? It needs to be a system, and all the components of the system should be in place somehow. I'm not saying they're our responsibility, say the metro region, but I don't think it's right for the state not to be part of this conversation.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I think just a comment I kind of had, and I've got some scheduled meetings with H3S and a number of other folks because this is obviously a subject that's dear to my heart. And really looking, and I think you touched on it a couple times, it's a system, right? And I think Commissioner Fireside and I have also had kind of this concern is really, and we've done this before, it's really a mapping of the system. And wherever somebody might come into the system, where it's non-justice involved or justice involved or mentally ill or really having an entire system where folks can come in or come out, to include, which we've talked about, clean and sober living and housing and affordable housing. And so what I'm really hoping for really is to kind of have an understanding of where we're at on that spectrum, and then how do we kind of build that out. And I kind of consider it much like the Red Soils campus, right? I mean, there's a master plan for the Red Soils campus, and phase 32 or whatever it is down the road, you'll be adding another thing to it. And so I feel like what I'm hoping to see really in this role is what is that continuum of care, and how do we get there? And so there obviously are dollars available to that, and I think it's incumbent that we're really being conscientious of how we use those dollars, and I think that's the big issue about outcome measures, and it is a lot of money. And we want to make sure that those dollars are being put to the very best use and that we can really show that we're doing a good job with those dollars. So that's just kind of my big global perspective, and I see Commissioner West has a comment.
One thing that's apparent to me is that they continue to really go housing all the time. The only thing they talk about is housing, to the point to where the current policies that they're projecting would actually pilfer all of the wraparound services, and it would just be more housing, because the governor sees a giant pot of money and she has giant housing goals, but we still would be sacrificing treatment and care of individuals and access to that care. And we have been very clear about what a recovery-oriented system of care is. We've provided that resolution to Metro. I think that we really need to be harping on care, treatment, intervention, and those pillars of a recovery-oriented system of care, right? So housing is a tool, but housing is not going to necessarily restore someone's life. Maybe it improves the hierarchy of needs right out the gate. But if you're not completely incorporating that in a way that's patient-centered, that's evidence-based, that's trauma-informed, that gives them the appropriate type of housing based on where they're at. I say this 100 times. I can tell you what their new apartment's going to look like by looking at their tent on Knoll Creek. That person will fail, and we set them up for it. That's some of the issues that we've had around Tukwila. And so when we talk about building out a care system, and Sheriff, you did much of this when you were sheriff and were innovative in this space, being honest about the need of where that individual is, and then having that tailored approach to them, and allowing them to progress through a care continuum that gets them to be successful, hopefully to their own apartment, their own job, or in and out of school with good peer support and giving back to the community, and self-sufficient as possible. That's the overall goal. So they're not talking about self-sufficiency. There's not a lot of talk about sobriety. It's all housing, and how can we have more money for housing, which is wildly expensive. It's not the most efficient way to get people the care they need. And then we're still lacking the trust of the public, but they keep doubling down on it. And so whatever our response needs to be, we have to be clear about the lens in which we're operating.
Thank you. Commissioner Fireside.
Thank you. So I want to echo what Commissioner West said about multiple entry points into the system, because there's a difference between housing and shelter, right? And so everyone is at a different spectrum. And if we really are going to initiate a recovery-orientated system of care, it does have multiple entry points. I think as far as the SHS around the data share, the data sharing is really important. And I think in any way that we can be consistent in our language as a board around what that actually means to us in Clackamas County, and then, as a region, as a partner with Metro, I think that's really important. And then the other thing I would say is, we talk about this spend being 75% for population A, but we don't I'm glad we're doing the point-in-time count at this point, but I think we've lost sight of what population A is, and we're being held accountable to basically just standing up a program and then not really being thoughtful about what the scope of that program is, or how it's sustainable, or what that sort of looks like. And then like Commissioner Schrader and I talked about what a matriculation model and a path to prosperity, like we can't even really have those conversations because we're sort of like looking at how we can expand the tax forever and ever and add sticks and bricks, right? Which I think is great. If that's the conversation that we need to have and the only way we can build a capital stack for affordable housing is to have it out 20 years, like I get all of that. I've worked on those projects, I understand it. But I just think we really need to like get back to what we had promised the voters. And in any way that we can have those two conversations at the same time where we're understanding that we're treating this population, but at the same time there's administrative improvements that need to be made, and working in a collaborative way I think is really important. So thank you.
No, thanks, Commissioner. Commissioner Savas?
Yeah, really appreciate the conversation. One of the metrics that is missing, I think that got us in a little bit of trouble, is what if we were to disaggregate the revenues and figure out what was back taxes, what's current, and what's business, what's personal. I think it kind of give us a sense of what the picture looks like. And you heard me say this last week. Had we had the current revenue forecast, or Metro had the current revenue forecast a year ago, they probably wouldn't have said we're over collecting, right? So we wouldn't be where we are. But the conversation started, so that's a healthy thing. But doing the point in time count, talking to all these people that are in the business, whether they're in Washington County, nonprofits, or they're elected officials, or they're county staff, or Multnomah County, in Portland, the media, I'm glad they're there. I'm glad they're really covering this. It's a big, huge, important topic. I support them. I wish they had more resources to do more digging. So I just want to give my shout out to that aspect of this. But here's what, as I listen to, all the media outlets and the interviews of people that refuse the housing. Okay, let's go back to Sticks and Bricks. You build it, or they refuse shelter, right? And Commissioner Fireside made the distinction of the two. So there's shelter comes in a few different forms, and housing comes in a few different forms. But people that are offered, we got to ask ourselves this: why is population A, sum of population A, 65% is the number, refusing housing in any form? Totally. And I think we have to be honest with ourselves. Now, of course, the best way to answer that question is to listen to what they say. Yeah. Why? And they'll tell you. There's a number of reasons, right? But at the end of the day, when you drill down to it, if we're not listening to them, give their honest opinion, right? Who's more vested than they are, right, in their success? If we don't listen to them as a region or anyone else, then how are we going to solve? So why build sticks and bricks if we're missing the gap? And the gap, what we hear a lot is either a behavioral health, or it is mental health, or maybe it's my friends or my family, or I want to bring my pet, and the place I go won't accept my pet. There's a whole slew of things, but the most common denominator really boils down to that drug addiction services and/or / the behavioral health challenges. And some of those have some folks out there is sad as heck, but they have learning disabilities. My gosh. They need certain kind of care and help too. So I think that's where the state can help us in this. But to me, we ought to be listening to what they're saying when they refuse it. So I don't want to just jump in and build housing when we're missing an important gap in the continuum, right? Totally with that. This is a big gap. It's not, we knew it 2 years ago. We knew it 3 years ago, and yet we're not doing anything about it. And we're tweaking a model that has these, I won't say chasms in the continuum, that we're not going to be successful without it.
Yep.
Yeah, I just want to make one point too, that I've heard loud and clear from the business community about this cost and how it is impacting. And I think that's what's really important to be listening to, because, having businesses leave our county for tax reasons and implications is a big issue, and I know that's going to be a point of discussion. And so I just ask all of us to kind of be aware of that it is having an impact. I've heard from a number of businesses that feel like they're really paying a lot for this, and it is impacting their business. So I think it's incumbent upon us to really be thoughtful as we, come up with our response to Metro, in any kind of reduction. So I know we have more conversations about that, but I just wanted to throw that on the table. And Commissioner West, you had a comment?
Yeah, I agree with you totally, Chair. Here's the issue, though, is that we were told to get a lot of money, to run hard, to run fast, and to get ahead of this, and we have a finite amount of time. That's much different than a lot of the other failed taxes in Multnomah County that we're being held accountable for. So, Commissioner Schrader, you know this, we've had many conversations around this. We want appropriate child care. There's a way to do this. Let me tell you, Multnomah County is doing it now. They're just burning money with that child care tax. It's wildly inefficient. Child care is not being delivered, and the businesses are just paying exorbitant amount of money, and it's really failed. And that's not really even controversial, the thing to say anymore. That has nothing to do with wanting to get great child care for children. I think that we would all five be in unison on that. But I don't understand why that we don't have a position that says, hey, let's look at all these regional taxes and maybe like figure out where we can find those savings for businesses. But this one, we're in a crisis and an emergency, let's not necessarily go for that one, because we only have a very finite amount of time. We have a lot of trust to build, and we have a lot of traction to make. We have a lot of ground to make up. But there are other places where there could be real reform and real discussions. I believe that as an entire, if Metro and as a group, we offered an ability to say, hey, we will advocate and we will use our collective voice to go against these other inefficient taxes that are really troublesome and have been really chased businesses and job creators out of the area. You leave this one alone, but we'll go after these honest reforms. Maybe that's where we find some traction with the business community. But to come after this one specifically, the way it is and how volatile it is, and then gutting, which will end up gutting services and like take us backwards, I think is super wrong-headed. But maybe we make a proposal that unifies the region to say, hey, let's have an honest conversation about how Portland taxes and Multnomah County taxes that are really underperforming, and let's talk about those to find your savings. Leave this alone. I don't know if that's even possible. What do you guys think about that? But it isn't just the SHS tax, right? That's not the only thing on the table. Right now, the highest marginal tax rate in the United States for a metro area is Portland, and people are. It's my generation mostly leaving. If you make $400,000 or more, you're staying. You don't care. You're paying it. People like nurses and firefighters and working professionals that have kids and they live in it, they're either going to Clackamas County or they're going to Vancouver, or they're going to Idaho, Tennessee, Florida, Texas. They're not staying here. And we can't lose that base. We can't lose that part of our population the way we've lost it. So let's have a more honest conversation about the entire way we're taxed, not just being myopic towards this one thing that will really hurt vulnerable people and pull the rug out from the county.
So I would have a question for you.
Yeah.
So from my understanding, it's targeting a certain group of income makers, right?
Yeah.
And I know there's been discussion about perhaps broaden that, because I think they're feeling the central impact of it, where many others are not helping on this front. So I guess I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
On the targeting of the higher income earners, we all know, and why Clackamas County said no to this tax is because it was super volatile and poorly thought out by a special interest group that was more ideological than actually knowing anything about economics. Typical Oregon thing to do. Same people that created this problem are the same ones acting like they have the solutions to fix it. I say it over and over again. So it's just really bad economic policy that wasn't, that was also rushed. I don't know. On this specific tax, I would love to figure out a way to make it less volatile and more stable. I've never advocated for a tax in my life as somebody who's really fiscally conservative. But we're in uncharted territory with a moral crisis facing us every single day in our streets and the human despair we face. Like, this is, I grew up here, man. I used to be able to go to the parks as a kid. Like, I mean, when you were sheriff, like, this is unprecedented. So I'm open to, that's why I think that we have to look at the whole taxes, local taxes as a whole, and be honest about what's working and not working, and then focus our resources on dealing and triaging the crisis before us. It is the homelessness, it's the mentally ill, and those that struggle with substance abuse. We still, for decades, have known that we have lagged the nation here with this type of care, and now that we have the most money we've ever had, we still lag it, and the state is slow to actually still respond, and we're stuck at the local level dealing with it. So I'm open, I just think we have to be more holistic about all these different taxes and everyone's sacred little, their sacred cow that they have to protect their little revenue stream. But at the end of the day, if it's not working and it's costing a lot of money, it should go away and be redone. Especially with like the childcare tax, there's an art tax, there's just all these different layers of taxes within Port Multnomah. I don't know if that answers your question, but we're just being more like, not so myopic just towards SHS, which is the only tax we really have that addresses care and treatment for people. We had the $700 million housing bond that was sticks and bricks, super expensive to get up. Then this was the second piece of it that was like, okay, here's some housing ability, but it's also like a lot of services. And now the part that's actually care and treatment, we're gonna gut that and then just do more sticks and bricks. Like, it's just the same stupid behavior by the same people that had all the wrong ideas that we're in the situation we're in. So yeah, let's cut a bunch of taxes, but let's not hurt the people we're trying to service here.
Good point. Commissioner Savas.
Yeah, to respond to the chair's question, I guess, I think what would help me better understand that plight is to, again, get the disaggregation of the revenue streams to figure out what is consistent, what's inconsistent,
Yep.
right? And then figure out what percentage of that is actually the revenue stream, right? And maybe we can make an adjustment but I know that that's not happening here. It's like we're throwing darts at a dartboard and voila, right? That's the magic answer. I mean, come on, we're in the 21st century here. Let's step up our game. But I think that'd be very valuable. And I think the other question is, once you look at that, is this the right tax? I mean, why hasn't that conversation happened, right? Is this the right way of doing it? And by the way, and Martha and I know this really well, for crying out loud, our county, we're only serving half our county, right? And so we're here ignoring half our population, so to speak. And we know that people migrate locally. There's intermigration. And so how many people are coming up here is like the metro region subsidizing the entire state. I mean, to some degree, people are coming here because the services are here. Hopefully, they're not coming here because the drugs are here. But that whole, I think we need to be a little bit more holistic. That's why we need the state at the table, really.
Yeah.
I think we really, as partners, we need the state at the table.
Great. Commissioner Schrader.
Well, as someone who's been working on childcare, I agree with Ben, and one of the things I've been quietly doing is trying to see how we can do childcare as a proposition for the business community for a return on investment, and I'm not talking about a tax. I'm talking about public-private partnerships. And my personal frustration with something like that is that, again, Ben, you said it very well, that a lot of times you will knee-jerk attacks on the very people we should be communicating with, who are business people who might have a different framework of looking at things to really help us be more efficient. So what I would propose to do is really, we're doing that today, going to the Clackamas County Business Alliance. There are luminaries here, illuminaries is what we call them, in our business community that we need to pay attention to them, and not just the state and those of us in public service, but those of us who are running successful businesses should be part of a longer-term strategy to actually look at those revenue streams and get their advice about what is the most efficient way to do it. These are the people that, like I said, build prosperity and wealth in our community. So that's just something I would do, is make sure that we're talking directly to them in very meaningful ways and take what they say and implement it.
Great. Thank you, Commissioner Schrader. I think it was a great conversation. Thank you, Commissioner Savas. Commissioner Fireside, do you have anything before I?
I just, one thing popped in my head when Commissioner Schrader was talking is, when I was watching the Metro meetings, I think it was really astounding to me that the service providers were there, the business community was there, but our constituents, our working class families who are paying this tax, were not there. And so I'd really, in whatever way that we can facilitate that conversation, maybe it needs to happen at night, not at 10 o'clock in the morning, because I would imagine these folks are at work, right? So in any way that we can broaden the conversation and really carry their voices forward and what it is that they want, whether we're talking about modification of indexing and how we're charging the tax, or we're looking at expanded uses. I really think that narrative is missing. So in whatever way we as a commission can facilitate that conversation, I would very much appreciate that, so.
And I might add, I think that was one of the reasons that initiative failed in this county, because I think that voice was missing, and people were not paying attention to the people at the meetings in Clackamas County, where they were saying, we can't manage this, we can't have one more thing on our plate. And I speak as someone who pays that tax, and I can't say it's a major strain, but it's just one more thing as someone who's single and on her own that I kind of have to think about. But that's really, it's not about me. You're really correct, and I always thought that $125,000 wasn't necessarily these days. That's a middle-class income, quite frankly. And I have neighbors who are probably paying the tax as well, who have like 3 kids in college at the same time. So thank you for that, Commissioner.
Commissioner West.
I don't know if you guys saw the recent article that just came out by KGW. I mean, this is just like so typical and unfortunate. The Recovery Center in downtown Portland was denied funds because it wasn't the right fit for the joint office, is what the new director says out of Multnomah County. And city team has a long history of doing amazing work in this space in this city. And for political and ideological reasons, they were denied a significant, like I think it's $500,000 or some significant amount of money to help them get this thing up and running to deal with that most vulnerable population. In our recovery-oriented system of care, we understand that government alone won't fix this. We're all stakeholders in this. That includes our faith community. That includes the business community. That includes, our neighbors, the Little League, the schools. I mean, we are all into making sure our community is healthy. And then we see really ideological and harmful decisions made by that joint office, which has been embroiled with its own controversy. We even just saw even through the election cycle, the debate around whether it should even exist. It has been such a failure in many instances. But as we're just trying to wrap around this crisis, we keep seeing every week stories that are just make you scratch your head a little bit. I just think whatever communication we have, we have to be willing to talk about how we have to take down some of these ideological barriers. It's all hands on deck. And if we have a good historical service provider, then we're willing to partner with them. If they fit within a recovery-oriented system of care, we have to make sure we have transparency about who is receiving these dollars. And they've been properly vetted, so we know that it's just not a grift and it's bloated with staff and administration, and the dollars don't ever get to those that are vulnerable. We have to be clear about transparency and where we're going around our data sharing, right, and moving forward, and what that looks like, and how we share that as a county. The governance model we need to talk about. But I think that we can clearly communicate the Clackamas County way, but it is much different than what we've seen out of the Joint Office of Homeless Services, and much different than we've seen come out of Multnomah County. And much of where we're at is because we can't seem to get a lot of traction when that county continues to struggle. I don't know if those are some at least highlights I think we should discuss. I think we should also talk about the funding stream and the taxes and an overall holistic look. We've talked about that here today. There seems to be a lot of agreement on those issues. I'm trying to summarize all the things that we have come up with. I think we should have a larger conversation about innovative prevention and not ever getting somebody into this. How do we prevent these more severe cases of mental illness or substance abuse in our communities? Where are we getting way downstream on that and that value-based care? I don't think that we're talking about that enough. And I think as a region, not just Clackamas County, I think Metro, the 3 counties and the cities that are moving forward, we need to let the governor hear us and ask the state to actually do its job and partner in a way that's a little more robust. And so we need to understand what that conversation looks like too.
Great. Thanks, Commissioner. And Commissioner Savas.
Yeah, I just want to just build on something that resonates with me that Commissioner Fireside mentioned, and that is, in this case, talking about the folks that are paying that we're not really hearing their voices, right? We're not really understanding where they're coming from, and maybe even ideally, I'd like to know how much of it is, can I see what I'm buying? What I would support what I'm buying, for example, right? It's not just about can I afford it or not. I think it's a number of things. And I've heard from people that pay it that say, yeah, I think it's important. I'm willing, but I'm not seeing the results, right? So, but what I really wanted to talk about, my 25 years of elected and 28 years of being involved publicly, the paradigm we live in is just that. You get a group of people that are advocates. They think they have a good idea. It doesn't matter if it's county, city, local, district, community, whatever it may be. And they lobby us, the electeds, and try to come up with a great idea or a change. And then you find out that, well, that was a small group, and maybe it wasn't well thought out, and maybe the majority of people don't like it. So that's why you gotta be really careful. But that's really the paradigm, is that we tend to listen to the advocates, and we don't really offer ourselves up to listen to the general population. And the way that I really liked that we had here a few years ago was we had a pattern of we would take these hot, sticky issues, and we would quarterly have a town hall. And we were kind of doing it virtually. That's one way of getting a lot of attendance, but I don't care if it's in person or virtually or both. But that's one way of trying to connect with the community that has has challenges because they're at work. And we always held those in the evening when it's convenient for folks. And we got a lot of good input. We didn't, we might talk a little bit, but our goal was to listen and to listen to what they have to say. So that's one way of kind of overcoming that, a tool we have.
Great. Thanks, Commissioner. So I think in the interest of time, I know we have some other appointments going on. So if there's no other business, this meeting is adjourned.